All right, welcome back to the channel. So, Bernard Hopkins challenges the logic of Pauli Malignaggi and Ishe Smith and insists that boxing has a very serious problem. Now, wonder what that could be. Let's find out and talk about it in this video. All right, welcome back. So, gotta love it how things come around. Not too long ago, Pauli Malignaggi, who is a commentator for Showtime Sports, was having a series of back and forth with people on his Instagram page, and I do believe maybe also on his Twitter page, where he has insisted that there is no issue with racism in America, that it is in the figment of the imagination of Black people. And then he adjusted what he said to say that, yes, there's one-offs, but there is no systematic racism. And therefore, since he's in boxing, none of it in boxing. Ishe Smith, who purports to be a open-minded, progressive Black man who was looking for to point out injustices in the world, and he says that that particular phenomenon does not exist in boxing. It exists in the world, but it does not exist in boxing. Bernard Hopkins, who, although many people have issues with some positions that he's taken, I do believe has much more significant standing in this particular, as it relates to this issue, than either Pauli Malignaggi or Ishe Smith. What is that? First, unlike Pauli Malignaggi, Bernard Hopkins is a Hall of Fame level fighter who came out of the prison system, who grinded at a lower level in the boxing world and had to force his way up to the top pretty much strictly based on his skill, and has become arguably one of the top 3 welterweights of middleweight fighters of all time. Also, more standing on the issue than Pauli Malignaggi because he is Black. So he knows as much as anybody else who is his age, who's been on this planet the same number of days that he has, what he sees, what he's experienced, not only outside of the boxing ring, but inside the boxing ring. He was also not just a Black fighter, Hall of Fame level fighter, he was also a promoter. So he also runs and part owns a promotional company that deals with the management and the promotion of fighters. That, my friend, gives him a better resume and more standing to speak on this particular issue than either Ishe Smith or Pauli Malignaggi. More than both. Now, I should not have to in the world that we live in, specifically in the world of boxing, and all the things that have happened in boxing, even have this discussion. But unfortunately, there are people like Ishe Smith and Pauli Malignaggi that, despite all of the hard work and despite all of the mistreatment, despite all of the unequal treatment, the blackballing, the flat out color lines that are drawn in the past, all the way up to now, where you have an incredibly ethnically consistent makeup and lists like the pound for pound list on ESPN and Ring Magazine, right? Which seem to have the same tendencies that there were in boxing before. Now, obviously, you know what we're talking about. We're talking about the concept or the idea that there is racism in boxing. So before I get into the rest, specifically what Bernard Hopkins said, thank you so much for coming to the channel. Thank you guys so much for supporting me on the Super Chats, the Cash App, and in the live streams. Thank you guys for the Patreon and the channel membership. So what did Bernard Hopkins actually say? He was asked the question, is there racism in boxing? He not only said that there's racism in sports, he said that it is especially prevalent in boxing. He did not say that, yes, it exists in sports just like, in boxing, right? It exists in all sports and it exists in boxing. What he said was especially in boxing. And he said that it not only existed inside the ring, that it exists and it is prevalent outside the ring. And he did not just say that it was at one level of boxing, right? He said it is at all levels of boxing, up and down boxing. Now, let me tell you what up and down boxing means. Up and down boxing means from you getting signed as a professional prize fighter, you're signing as a professional prize fighter, your access to trainers and consequently your access to trainers, your access to get on fight cards, your access to the exposure that comes from the positive treatment by the media, your treatment by the sanctioning bodies in your rankings and your defenses of your titles, right? All the way up to the way that the commentators call the fight and the standards that they have for one fighter versus the other fighter. The things that we have been paying attention to and watching as black fight fans pretty much the entire time that we've been there. Now, now think about this. Colin Kaepernick was clearly blackballed. The NFL came out, there's people that associated work for the NFL that came out and said something we already knew, that the reason Colin Kaepernick does not have a job in the NFL has nothing to do with his talent, his ability to be a starter or his ability to be a backup in the league. And it has everything to do with the fact that he said, what he said and the stance that he took, the nonconformist stance that he took. Now, that's blackballing, right? Everybody says what that is. Now you can say that about that in basketball. You can say that about that in football. You can say that about, I'm not as, as known about baseball, right? Except for, I think you can see some desperate treatment in baseball too, but nothing like boxing. Nothing is consistent and complete as boxing. Because boxing is the only major sport where, in my opinion, the only major sport where you can be a top-notch fighter and not get signed. If you are a top-notch fighter, I'm talking about coming into the pros. There are guys, and a perfect example of that is Terrence Crawford. And if you look at how Terrence Crawford came into what his amateur career was versus what Mikey Garcia's amateur career was, or other people's amateur careers were, or like probably a better example than that, like a Joey Spencer, what his amateur career was. And you compare that to what Terrence Crawford being an alternate for the Olympics, but most importantly, beating convincingly two fighters in Danny Garcia and Mikey Garcia in the amateurs that you know perfectly who immediately got wound up getting signed by Golden Boy Promotions and Top Rank. But yet the kid out of Omaha that you could look at from the outside and say, man, that is a terrific fighter. Any fight you ever seen, he was a terrific fighter. But yet, where did he have to start his career? He had to start his career out in fighting in barnyards in the middle of who knows where, right? And then as soon as he was given the opportunity, and who was he given the opportunity by? He's given the opportunity by Tim Bradley after he sparred with Tim Bradley and gave Tim Bradley so much work that he was like, hold on, man, we got to get this guy a championship fight. And he had to luck up, move up in weight to get Marius Bradis, right? So compare that to the treatment of guys like The 154-pound WBA the WBA 154-pound #1 contender, the guy that is actually a man who might wind up being a mandatory for Jason Rosario. The guy is ranked number one in the WBA with 4 fights. 4 fights. You see the explanation. I could go on and on and on about that. But to hear it from Bernard Hopkins saying, look, this is a serious problem, and especially in boxing, is important to hear, because up until all of this stuff started happening, anybody that claimed it was themselves called that. So thank you, Bernard. I know there's not necessarily, there's some other stuff about Bernard Hopkins, and I know you guys are some people will take that a little, not necessarily, believe that he's being honest about it or have issues with them. But regardless of whether he's being, whether he's, 100% stand-up guy or not, the man's telling the truth, and I applaud him for that. You let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Peace.